Awesome. Good morning, folks. Great to
Good
have you
morning.
all. Come on, say hi, say hello. We'll give everybody another 60 seconds, and then we may go into some magic fingers. We may go into a lot of cool things that
All
happen.
right. All right.
So I will watch the time here, so we can. Rob will give us 30 seconds, and then I'll tell the team to.
Yeah.
We'll load it up. And hey, Rob and I extensively prepared for this, so
Yeah, right. I am going to pull up a couple things that are new, though.
Yeah, you should. You should.
And hopefully I could share screen and people could see it.
Yeah, you want to try sharing your screen to make sure you can and all that, and then you can.
Yeah, give me a second. Where? Here we go. All right.
Good morning, folks. I love seeing the chat light up. So thank you all for that. You know my fragile ego, but Rob definitely needs a high Rob.
Yes. I'm all about how other people think about me. So
yeah, Julia. Good morning. I got to get you another parking lot video coming up sometime. That's right. Good morning.
All right, let me try sharing screen.
All right, try it once.
Let's see, share screen.
Let's see if that works.
I can't do it. The button is.
Oh, weird. Okay, here.
Hold on. I got it. Share. Keynote.
Oh, there you go.
How's that? Is that showing up?
Perfect. Now you can
right.
you stop sharing and then we can chat for a while.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. How do I do that? Stop share. Okay.
That's it. All right.
Fantastic.
All right. Let's do this, man.
Let's do it.
So mark the team here. 5:07. Ready, set, go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the very special episode of the Kingston Lane Mastermind. I am super excited to have one of the people that I admire the most in the real estate industry. I want to introduce you all, if you already don't know, to the notorious ROB, my friend Rob Hahn. For those of you who don't know Rob, he's one of the most strategic advisors to the biggest of real estate companies around the country. Most of the CEOs and boards that make the biggest of decisions, including hedge funds, private equity funds, etc., lean on Rob for the state of the industry, where it's going, what they can do differently, and how to navigate the waters. And Rob's done a lot of work with just big institutions, big companies, and also boards and MLSs around the country. Most recently, Rob and I actually got to speak on the same stage together, which I always enjoy that.
That was awesome.
You're
like, seriously, man, you're a secret weapon people need to know more about. Jesus.
I appreciate it. And the interesting part, wanted to share this with you all, is Rob and I, last year, almost a year ago exactly, we did this really well-received introduction to what was happening in the iBuyer market. And it popped up on both our feeds yesterday in Facebook. And Rob was like, oh my gosh, it's an insane amount of change that has happened so far. Let's give people a refresher. Let's do it for our community and share some things that have been going on. So let me do some housekeeping very quickly. So think of us as all being at dinner, and the chat is you can just chat and talk to anybody, and just make the chat all about, the comments that you're seeing, that you want to comment something on. But if you want to ask a question, I want to make this very clear so we don't drop any questions. If you want to ask the question, there's a box down below on your screen that says Q&A. I'll monitor the Q&A. And I'll make sure that Rob, I will pose those questions in time, in line with context, and we'll get Rob to answer those questions as well as we think through the stuff. So think of the chat as us yelling and having fun at dinner, and think of the Q&A as you bumping Rob and doing a little whisper and saying, hey, answer this question. So
just me? I mean, you're going to be answering some questions too, my man. Seriously.
And I don't iBuyer. If someone says iBuyer, I just call you. It's way easier that way. So Rob, for I know folks have, let me set some context here. So it's, since the first iBuyer transaction happened, whenever it happened,
2014,
right?
probably.
2014. Yeah. So it's been close to 4 or 5 years. And the funny part is, people are we are a frog in this little kettle, and slowly the temperature is turning up and we're not even feeling it, right? And now we're seeing the changes across the industry. So very quick, kind of like, what are the 3 to 5 like high level things that has happened in the last year, if you will, that you see as changes in the landscape? And then we'll get into some questions.
Sure. So first of all, like the motivation for, I think, wanting to do this, part of it was because that things popped up, which was really cool, right? The other part is, I mean, I agree that the industry is a little bit like a frog in a boiling pot, but I don't know. Recently, it's been different, right? Recently, I'd say in the last, I don't know, 2 to 3 months, there's been a lot more attention being paid to this iBuyer thing. There was recently a video, some guy released some, "Nar, what are you doing for us with this, you know, iBuyer threat, you know, kind of thing." And there have been a number of like, you know, people like talking about this on Facebook and elsewhere, like, and the whole message seems to be, don't lose like a shit ton of money, you know, don't sell to these iBuyers, come talk to me. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, you know, that's fine. The problem is, I feel like a lot of those reactions have very little basis in actual reality and data. And I have some real concerns about that, right? Because the issue is, if you go to your clients, to sellers, you know, to people that you know that you have relationships with, and then you tell them something that ends up being not necessarily true, like it really undermines your credibility, right? And I feel like if you're going to talk about iBuyers, you're going to talk about all these new things that are happening, it's better for real estate agents and brokers to base it on some sort of data, some sort of, here's what's happening. So part of this motivation was, look, if you want to talk shit about iBuyers, go right ahead, right? But just do it based on actual like numbers and data that you're collecting, right? Don't just kind of go off and, you know, assume things, right? Yeah. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, I think in this last year, a couple other things have become sort of clear, because there are some, you know, a lot of the criticism, if you will, of iBuyers. Oh, you know, we don't have to worry about these guys because when the market turns, they're all going to go away. You know, they'll all go bankrupt. I'm like, I'm seeing some stuff, and I've been crunching some numbers, and I just thought, hey, you know, it might be fun just as an update, like update the rest of the community, you know, do a video record so we could look back on it a year from now and go, wow, Rob was really goddamn wrong. You know? Well, something along those. That's really what I wanted to do.
Well, the interesting thing is, the one thing to frame those two comments, is if everyone's not watched this video that you and I watched from Andreessen Horowitz.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right, that you and I watched, and we're like, how can I play this again and watch this again? Because it was that good. And we have the average agent watching that and have their blood boil, right?
Yeah.
So I'll post a video that everyone should watch. Let me give you the.
It's called "When Software Eats the Real Estate World."
Yeah.
Alex Rampell, Andreessen Horowitz. I think it's the A16Z conference or summit or whatever.
Yeah.
It's potentially the most important video, I think, that's come out in the last couple of years.
Exactly.
I mean, it's mind blowing. Yeah.
And Rob, I'll give you my 2 quick 1-minute takeaways from that. Takeaway number 1, essentially, if you have not watched the video, and you should, and I'll post the link for you.
Yeah.
Is instead of, you know, buying and selling from each other, we're going to buy and sell homes from companies. That's the primary theme.
That's right.
But the second thing, and Rob, this is what I want you to talk about. Everyone's like, well, who cares?
Yeah.
Who's listening to Andreessen Horowitz? Like, the answer, what people don't understand is this. I've never heard of Andreessen Horowitz. Who's listening to Andreessen Horowitz?
Right.
Just because somebody who invested in Lyft and Uber tells me that this is going to happen, why do I care that some guy in a pink jacket is going to actually tell me how I'm going to run my business? And that answer is where everything is.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, Andreessen Horowitz is pretty much like the most successful venture firm like ever,
in the world,
right? In the history of that. I mean, I think they were behind like Square and, you know, Facebook and Zynga. I mean, some of these like giant companies that have completely changed the world, right? And they're really strong in internet, I think, and especially like, you know, Web 2.0 type companies. And now they're transitioning to these Web 3.0 companies. And that presentation was unbelievable, because like one of the other things I want to point out about this is, you know, I do a lot of calls, right? And I have conversations and, you know, meetings with Wall Street people, you know, with these private equity, hedge fund, and all of that. And usually they don't quite really understand the industry. Usually they're a lot of sort of my advice to them is pretty basic. I have to tell you, Rampell, when he did that video, knew his shit. Like he wasn't real kind to the industry, but he also wasn't trying to bash it either.
No,
he was just kind of stating things as he saw it. And, because he's not in the industry, he's not a real estate agent, he's not a broker, he's not a consultant, he's not one of us. So he just like kind of said whatever came to mind.
Right.
So yeah, I think the issue is when you look at the billions and billions of dollars that's flowing into the industry, that has flowed into the industry, a big part is because of guys like Rampell, sort of looking at real estate, what's happening, what the fundamental structures are, coming to conclusions, and the money guys all listen. That's how I look at it. It's kind of like the old E.F. Hutton commercial from back in the 80s and 90s. When E.F. Hutton talks, everybody listens. I kind of feel like, look, when Andreessen Horowitz talks, people are going to listen.
Yeah.
Because these guys have a proven track record and they're incredibly smart and they know what they're talking about.
So
go
ahead.
The other big takeaway from that video, by the way, because I've been using that presentation, I've been using that video or clips of it in a bunch of presentations. The other big one is this. He actually says, it's not that real estate agents are going to go away. What he says is they're all going to work under the rubric of a company. And it's because he thinks that the future of housing, future of real estate is going to be so data driven. And it's going to be all about what sort of insights can you get. And, the example that he uses is staging, right? And he's invested in a company that does staging, and they did an A/B test. And he didn't really get into kind of what they found in that A/B test, but basically his point is, if you ask a real estate agent today, should I stage my house? The answer is always yes. And not only is the answer yes, but I know the perfect stager, right? Who will come in and do a great job, blah, blah, blah. And then his whole thing was, does it work? Does staging work, right? And there's no answer. There's just sort of this gut feeling. There's just this, of course it works. Well, how do you know? Show me the data. There's no data, right? There's no homes that have been staged, homes that haven't been staged, A/B. There's none of it. And I actually extended that and said, I think the problem is not just that, should I stage the home? I feel like the question that the consumer is going to ask in the future are going to be, how much should I spend on staging?
Right.
And if we as an industry, as real estate agents, don't have a good answer to that that's backed up by data, it just undermines the credibility. And so to that extent, I think he's sort of right. I think not that real estate agents are going to be like employees working for a company like Redfin, but they are going to have some sort of company, right, that has a real data science practice, that has some real things like this, that's able to give them those tools. Yeah. Right. So that when you walk in to a listing presentation, you're talking to your client, and he says, okay, well, how much should we drop? Things aren't moving. We need to do a price reduction. How much? Well, I mean, if you say, well, we're just gonna, it's 5%. Yeah, because that's what I've always done. Does that work? Like, what's the impact? Can I lower 1%? Can I lower 2%? It's a lot of those types of things. Yeah. So that's the other major takeaway from that video.
Yeah. The question that I think, especially around the industry right now, is there's this feeling that, well, yes, there are some iBuyer options out there.
Yeah.
They're working in some homogenous markets to test their model, et cetera.
Yep.
But why? But there's this sweeping statement that, well, an iBuyer is always going to offer you less.
Yeah.
And you looked at some numbers.
And I don't know if that's true. So let's start with this first premise, okay?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to really have to push this, because the issue is that the term iBuyer has been co-opted by everybody. It's kind of like AI, big data, whatever, these big buzzwords. So I feel like every Tom, Dick, and Harry now is an iBuyer, okay? So people will say things like, there are certain brokerages and small agent teams that are starting to offer iBuyer. Well, what they're really doing is they're fronting for a local investor or hard money lender or somebody who comes in and says, oh yeah, we'll pay you 60 cents on the dollar, right? Because we need a 30-40% discount so that we can invest in it, flip it, Right. So we're talking about flippers. Right. And yet they're like, we're iBuyers. No, so let's start with this premise. What I would define iBuyer is the difference between an iBuyer and an investor / flipper is that an iBuyer will pay market value. or as close to it as possible. It almost has to be the definition. If you look at the numbers that come out of places like Phoenix, Orlando, I mean, I'm starting to collect a lot of data. The data I'm going to present to you and the mastermind today comes out of Phoenix, so I have the best data out of it. But that has to be a definition, right? Otherwise, you could call yourself anything. You know, we buy ugly houses. You know, they're an iBuyer. They're not. You know, they're not. They're investors. They're flippers.
Yeah.
Okay. So having said that, this would be a good time to share. And this is one of the things I wanted to do the most, right? Because look, if you're going to go and talk to your clients about iBuyers, have some data, right? So that you don't lose your credibility with them. All right. So let me look at sharing this screen. Tell me if this shows up.
Yep.
Right, how's that?
Got it. Yep.
Got it. All right. I can't. All right. So I need to move this real quick. All right. So economics of Zillow offers. Now, why Zillow? Okay. Because Zillow is the only company that really discloses their numbers. You know, they're a public company, but so is Redfin, but they don't, for whatever reason, they don't really disclose their unit economics, if you will, of this stuff. Whereas Zillow does. So I've been able to compute some of this. This is based on...
Rob, you moved the thing off your screen. So there you go. That's better.
Okay. I don't know if I'm able to expand this a little bit. Hold on.
If you hit play, it should expand.
Yeah. All right. How's that?
Yep. Full screen. Good.
Okay. Perfect. I'm going to close this screen so I could see it. Okay. Go away. All right. You see everything?
Yes.
Okay. So here, this is based on Q2 data from this year. Zillow offers. They're roughly, I want to say this was based on 396 transactions. Okay. So when you do the average, here's what you get. You get that Zillow paid a purchase price on average of $310, and change, right? And then they turned around and sold that home, the average home for $312.
Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat, you see that they're paying pretty close to market. This is not a 30% discount, right? Days on market from purchase. So, this is a new term, I guess. The way I looked at it was, when did Zillow buy the home? Okay. And then when did they actually sell it? So it's not, days on market, like they listed it and then they sold it. It's they bought it and then they sold it, right?
Right.
So on average, it's 105 days. Okay. All right. So that's, basic 3.5 months, right? Between purchase and sale. Zillow's told us that they spend roughly $12,000, or spent in Q2 on renovation costs, which includes things like painting and carpet, whatever. And I got to tell you, because I didn't know any of this, I had no idea that painting a house is so damn expensive. I thought it was like, painting, get a couple cans. Like, no. Yeah. It's a lot. Anyway, so you have holding costs. Hold on, let me try and move this. Okay, so you've got holding costs, $3,268. Again, this comes from Zillow. So the holding costs are things like property taxes, HOA fees, utilities. Utilities is really the big one. And then selling costs. And when I looked at the selling costs, it breaks down actually really neatly into, if you pay the listing agent 1%, right? Because obviously it's institutional rate, 3% to the buyer's agent, full cooperating compensation. And then it works out to about the 0.3% closing costs, which I thought seemed low, right? Because Sunny would tell me closing costs should be roughly 0.75 to 1%, et cetera. Until I realized Zillow actually has their own escrow title, company. Right. So, think what you want. All right. So with that, I'm trying to advance this. Okay. So here we go. Can you guys see that?
Yeah. So if you are not paying attention so far, I would take 5 minutes and you need to pay attention to this. Your entire time that you set aside with us today, is worth just the time
for this
slide. Yeah.
This slide. Okay. So this is how oh wait, this isn't exactly correct. Give me 1 second. Hold on. 4, 3. Okay, there we go. All right. Play. Okay, so if you plug all those numbers in and you do a side-by-side comparison, this is sort of what flows out. Okay, and we could talk through the logic, we would take some questions, etc.
Yeah.
So we have Zillow's purchase price. If you were to sell to Zillow, right, Zillow would pay you $310, $131. Okay, Zillow said that they charged the seller convenience fee of 7.5%, right? And that was from their earnings call in Q2. Okay, that's 23,260. What they've also said is that they try to get from the seller what they're going to spend on renovation. So if the renovation cost is 12,000, they're going to try and get seller to make a seller concession of 12,000.
So essentially, what we should be thinking about this as, hey, if I were listing to sell my house, this is what I might have to negotiate on request for repairs and things like that.
Correct, right. And that's actually a big part of the second set of assumptions, right? So if you sell to Zillow, you're going to end up, eating the seller fee, the seller concession, but your days on market is 0, right? Because you've sold it.
Right.
You have no holding costs. You have no renovation costs. That's the whole premise of this whole iBuyer. You don't have to clean the house. You don't have to do anything, right? Just live there and then move out, and we'll take care of the rest. Selling costs, it turns out the seller does have to pay their own share of the selling costs, which I said was fine. It's 0.75%, because the seller doesn't own an escrow title company, so they're gonna have to pay it. No interest expense because they sold it, right? So the seller net is 272,462. Now, if that seller were to then list the home to try and sell it with a realtor, my point is, I think they get 312, which is what Zillow got when it's sold later.
Right.
And my rationale to me is like, look, you could say a house is worth whatever the hell you say it's worth, right? The phenomenon of agents called buying listings and whatnot. Yeah. But really, a home is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. So in this case, I know it's counterfactual, right? So maybe there's some case to be made that your listing agent is so amazing and so unbelievable, they're able to get, 350 for it.
Yeah.
Problem is, I'm like, there's a buyer agent, right?
Yeah.
So the buyer's going to be represented by a competent realtor. Let's make that assumption. Who's going to look at it and go, no, the comps don't make any sense. This house is only worth 312, right? Don't pay 350. Don't be an idiot, right? So I'm saying if Zillow was able to sell for 312 after renovation, then to me, the seller is going to get 312, right? Fine. Agent commission 6%. And that is actually the sort of the quote norm, if you will, in Phoenix. I know it's dangerous to talk about norms, but it is what it is, okay? Here, what I've said was, look, I think the seller's going to put in roughly $7,000 in renovation costs, because any agent worth their salt is not going to go, yeah, don't repay. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to say you have to do some work. So I spent $7,000 in renovation, and then during the negotiation, they're probably going to make $5,000 seller concessions, because again, you have agents on both sides.
Right.
So whoever's representing the ultimate buyer is going to come in and say, yeah, it's nice you guys repainted and you carpet, that's cool, but we still need this, 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 and this. Whatever Zillow found, that buyer agent's also going to find, right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, that's a wash. Here's where things get different. For then, you actually have to count on having the same days on market that Zillow had, which is 105 days. Mm-hmm. So you're going to spend 3.5 months additional days on market. And you're going to have holding costs because, it's not like you don't pay HOA fees or utilities. You do. So there's holding costs. Yeah. We talked about renovation costs already. And then closing costs can be the same either way. And then the final thing is I made some assumptions about how much what their loan was, et cetera, what they paid for it. And interest expense during those 3 months is going to come to about $2,500 for the home owner. So when you look at it, the seller net is $273,315. We're talking about a difference of like $1,000.
$900
for 3.5 months.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here going like, yo, I don't know about you, but if I don't have to deal with 3.5 months of having to show my house, do the renovation work, having to stage it, all of that stuff, like I do that every day, right? I twice on Sundays. And this is the issue. So it's like this notion that you're going to leave 30% on the table for non-buyers. I'm like, show me the data. Where's that coming from? With flippers and investors, completely understand. Yes, you are going to leave a huge chunk of change if you sell to a flipper or an investor. And they admit it. This is how that's how they make their money. These guys, no. By definition, iBuyer is somebody who's going to pay market. I see a Q&A question.
Yeah. There's Shane Todd asked a good question. He says, do these numbers change dramatically based on price point? And if so, where's the crossover point where the traditional sale is better?
So the problem is that it's really hard to answer that question today because iBuyers, Zillow, Opendoor, all these guys have typically focused on kind of a very sort of uniform, buy box, right? And as you had mentioned, they're in Phoenix because it's very amenable to computer algorithms trying to figure out what the pricing ought to be. Now, having said that, Zillow and Open Door and I think Redfin are in Denver, which is a higher price point, roughly 400 and change.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Zillow just went into San Diego, which is much higher. It's roughly 600,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the next couple of quarters, we're going to see more information, more data come out of it. It's just right now, we don't know if there's a huge difference, Shane, between, these types of numbers from Phoenix and what we might see once we move to, say, San Diego, right? It's a great question, and I just don't have the answer for it because we don't have the data.
So Rob, just to follow up on Shane's question, he asked another one, which is, do you think this is based on them selecting the marketplace, say at the 300K number, or is it mostly, hey, listen, the buy box is this, it's more homogenous, therefore my algorithm can do a better job predicting, therefore this market's better?
I think it's the latter, right? Again, because Zillow went into San Diego, right? And nobody in their right mind thinks that San Diego is an affordable housing market, so I think the issue was when they were starting out, and this is going to be them, it's going to be Open Door, it's going to be OfferPad, it's going to be any of these guys. A huge part of what makes this work is that computer algorithm, the pricing model. And obviously, it's much easier to make that happen when you have much more uniform housing stock, essentially master plan communities with cookie cutter homes, right? Like my neighborhood here in Las Vegas is like the perfect example of it, right? Literally every house in my little subdivision, every house is identical except for color. So I'm like, it's the exact same floor plan, same foot. Like it's really easy to price that, right? Which it's really hard to do that in, say, like some fishing village in New England, from the 1700s, where every home is wacky and different. So I think that's what it is. And I think what I'm going to watch, and what I think everyone should watch for in the next year or so, is as these guys move into higher price point markets. And again, I'm not as familiar with San Diego, but my assumption is there are probably going to be pockets of San Diego where it's a lot of master plan communities, just at a higher price point. And if these guys could then make the algorithms work, all they have to do is expand the buy box, right? Which is simply just to say, we're going to spend more money. But because when they go to sell it, they're going to make more money, right? So at the end of the day, it's going to sort of be a wash. We'll see, though, because I think I don't want to make those assumptions until we see the numbers. I think it's a decent operating assumption, though.
So two questions for you. Question number one is, I know you kind of have your pulse on, or whatever Zillow stated from inbound inquiries on, hey, give me, like, what do those numbers look like compared to what they want to do? I think it was 5,000 homes a month or something like that. Can you talk about those two numbers?
Yeah. So in Q2, again, we're going to get some updated numbers when they report Q3. In Q2, they said that they got 70,000 requests for offers. Wow. 70,000, right? So this is actually one of the things that I find kind of interesting, right? And this maybe gets to a more of a in the weeds conversation about the difference between, say, Zillow as an iBuyer and everybody else. Zillow basically is like, they just don't have the capability to buy more, right? And it's not the money, interestingly. And I think they said this in one of the earnings calls, is that they don't have enough boots on the ground. Because, there's this whole lengthy process, right? You get them out an offer instantly, but then somebody actually has to go view the home, right? To make sure that it's not like burned down, right? So, that there's not like a meth lab, So it's those like in-person visits, and then the evaluation, and then a final offer kind of thing. And they're like, we just don't have enough people, right? So they're hiring like mad, right? And that's one of the interesting things about this. And this maybe goes to the question Andrea asked, which we'll get into, I think, a little bit, because that's another aspect of this. But I'm telling you, these guys are actually, based on my computation, based on the numbers I've got, they're actually like a pretty decent, healthy gross margin on this. Yeah. It's just that they're all losing money because they're hiring like crazy. I mean, because it's 70,000, So I think I think the numbers I said was they bought something like 310 just in Phoenix. So who knows, across all the markets, they might have bought maybe 5% of that number. Right? Yeah. And it's not because they don't have, like, they'd love to be able to buy more of it. It's just they don't have enough bodies. They don't have enough capability, but the pipeline is unreal.
Yeah.
Now,
well, And the one thing that I hope everyone has had a chance to, even we're using Zillow just as an illustration here.
Because they're the only public company,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I have some numbers on Open Door and OfferPad in terms of what they paid, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that I don't know what Open Door's renovation costs are typically, right? I mean, I've heard just, anecdotally that, for example, OfferPad tends to spend a lot more on renovation, than Zillow does. Like Zillow, when they say renovation, we're talking about like cleaning and painting, for the most part. I've heard OfferPad tends to do more, but I don't have any numbers. Same thing with Open Door. I've heard they tend to do a little bit more. I just don't have any numbers. So that's why it's hard for me to do this kind of plug.
Well, the interesting part is also, I think what we as both consumers and part of the real estate industry serving consumers need to see is even if you go to a Zillow website right now and you search for a home, the interface is completely different. They are heavily pushing the Zillow offer and the iBuyer funnel, right? Like it's you're in the iBuyer funnel constantly, which we should recognize. I mean, there may be for those that are advertising on Zillow, et cetera, like totally cool. Now they're getting offer-based leads from iBuyer, and you're getting impression-based lead, which is totally fine. But please know that it's not, they're actually getting better leads now, which is why they're able to like handpick teams to both represent them on the list side. And then whoever's not getting them on the list, they're giving everybody the buy side deals. Like it's insane.
Yeah. So there's what's funny is the next slide. So there's a couple of things I want to point out, and then we'll go back to this maybe. Actually, let me do this, and then because I think these next three your people are going to find really interesting. Yeah. The people that are here. Hold on, I'm just seeing. There are a bunch of questions in chat that I've been missing because I've been looking at Q&A.
So, hey, if you wanted to put a question in just to make sure we don't miss it, could you just, if you don't mind, just copy paste it in the Q&A box, and so I'll monitor that for Rob. So got some really good ones here.
Let's do anesthesia quick because that's an easy one. Okay. Right? So go ahead. You want to read the question?
Yeah. The question is, I'm curious, how does the 0 days on market work? I don't have a lot of background information on iBuyer, and I'm wondering if people are buying and selling at the same time. Do they allow people to stay in their home, or do they need to move out right away?
My understanding is that the seller has the option to basically pick the move out date.
Correct.
Right. So, and I think they say it's up to like 90 days. Which is kind of insane and incredible, right? In fact, I talked to somebody who sold their home to Zillow recently, through the Zillow offers thing. The thing that he loved the most was that he picked his move out date because he was, relocating across the country. Amazing. He had all these other issues, so he had to go visit the new place and then et cetera, et cetera. And his whole point was, like the traditional route, you sit there with this like chain, right? Because it's like, the guy I'm buying the house from, he needs to buy his house and move out, and coordinating that is just obnoxious. Yeah. Right? And in God case, you end up staying at hotels for like 3 months. I mean, it's just, his whole point was like with Zillow, it's just really easy, right? You just pick the move out date. So, you go and try and get your other side done. And of course, that's still painful right now, but his whole point is like, I move out, I don't clean it. I don't do anything. I don't do squat. I just pack up, move out, leave the house a mess, and it's Zillow's problem. That's how I think the 0 days on market works. Amazing. Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and they're not the only ones. Open Door, OfferPad, they all do the exact same thing.
Yeah, we actually have I'm an investor in a property, and I'm forcing them to go through the process just so I can see how how
it works.
I just want to see all the emails come back and be like, what am I getting offered?
Yeah. Where's your property?
It's in Phoenix.
Okay. So it's your ground zero. You'll see it all. Yeah. And all right. So I'm going to share a couple other things. This is why I think this is important for us to pay attention to. Let me go back to sharing the screen.
Hey, as we are doing this, if this is cool and this is helpful, just do a quick comment and a shout out for Rob, because I think that sometimes we all just need to know that this is helpful for you guys, and we want to make sure that this is a fun thing and you appreciate this and you're learning something.
I appreciate that.
You generally don't get to see. So,
okay, so let's go back to this chart that I had up, right? Which is, look, we're talking about a difference of $1,000, right? Here's the thing, that what you find is in some cases, a number of transactions, the seller actually ends up with way more money. Okay, so they make more money selling to Zillow, and it's primarily because Zillow made a mistake, they made a pricing error, so they pay too much, and then it happens, right? In other cases, they make a lot more money selling with a realtor. Again, there's a pricing mistake, but on average, it's what it comes down to. Here's why I think it's sort of important. This chart. Okay. So here's the insight to take away from here. When you think about like disruptive technology that comes along, whatever it is, right? If you have something that is a much better product or it offers a much better experience at a much higher price, it doesn't really grow that fast. You know what I mean? Or conversely, if you have something that's way cheaper, but like similar type of experience, but it's way cheaper, again, it's nice, but it doesn't get huge traction. It's when you have both of them. So you have a better experience at the same or lower price, and then growth looks insane. So this is Uber's growth, Uber and Lyft, compared to New York City yellow cabs. Again, because New York City publishes this data.
Right.
Look at this. We're talking about between January of 15 to January of 18, 3 years. 3 years. Uber and Lyft, Uber basically completely overtook yellow taxis. In New York City, I mean, just think how mind-blowing that is, like how iconic the New York City yellow cab is, right? So I'm looking at this chart, and the only reason I included it is say, if it's true, and there's a big if, that true iBuyers like Opendoor and Zillow, and probably OfferPad, are coming at par or potentially better, dude, I mean, the notion that iBuyer is going to stay this small, tiny fragment of the market, I'm like, where's that coming from? Because there's no doubt it's a much better experience, right? Again, and that's, by the way, I just need to make this point because I make this point over and over again in presentations. When I say it's a much better experience, it has nothing to do with the real estate agent.
Yeah.
No, you could have the perfect realtor, right? I mean, your realtor could be an absolute pro, amazing, great at pricing, just wonderful communicator. But there's nothing that your agent can do about the fact that the buyer bought a car you know what I mean? Like there's nothing they can do about that.
Right.
There's nothing that they can do about it. Just takes long, so many days. And you do have to show your home, which means you have to pile the kids and the dog into the van and get the hell out. I mean, there's nothing the realtor can do about those types of things. So I just want to make sure, because, in the video that you mentioned, he does kind of, talk shit about a lot of real estate agents.
Right.
And my point is, look, the transaction, the process, the experience is better with iBuyers, and it's nothing to do with the real estate agent. The real estate agent could be amazing, and it's still that case. Now, so that's one of the things to keep in mind, right? It's like, if these prices are kind of where they are, I feel like we're going to see types of growth that are going to blow our minds.
Yeah.
And I know, I think it was Rich Barton.
Yeah.
It might have been somebody else, but they were on a panel at sometime this year talking about we think it could get to about 20% market share. And I'm looking at this Uber chart going, I think that's low. If they could get prices low enough, I don't think it stops at 20, because again, 70,000 inquiries, right?
Yeah.
70,000 with zero marketing. And the only marketing Zillow has done about Zillow Offers is on Zillow itself. Like if you go to any home that is not active, there's a giant button that says get an offer.
Right.
That's how they get it, right? So it's kind of nutty. So again, this is just something from presentation. I think one of the things to realize is Zillow used to be an advertising site. Now they're not. They're this market maker that happens to have a portal, right?
So Rob, like this may be an interesting.
Stop share.
Let's talk about the math for like a Zillow, right? How do they? There's a lot of what we see in the media, which I think I saw recently was, hey, their iBuyer share grew from X to Y. Their iBuyer revenue grew from X to Y significantly, almost close to 45% of their revenue or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But they still lost $41 million.
Correct.
So I think the news rags in the industry, that they say is, oh, Zillow is losing a ton of money on that.
Yeah.
How do you paint the picture on just economics for us?
Yeah, because there are a number of questions that get into all of this. Like, I see that, why is Zillow doing this, et cetera. All right. So first of all, I wish I had the slides. I wish I had the data, and if I'll find it if people are really curious. So I ran some numbers based on just, again, the data that I have. Okay? And what I'm showing is that Zillow actually makes gross margins of about 8%. Now, there's an important distinction, gross margin versus net margin, right?
Right.
So they're making 8 cents on every dollar, basically, in profit on every one of their transactions. And then they lose an ass load because they're out there building offices and hiring people like crazy. Open Door makes about 10% gross margin, and OfferPad makes somewhere in the 11 to 12%. That's for Q2 data. I mean, I'm going to look at Q3, yeah. But those are pretty nice numbers, right? Just by comparison, by the way, the typical real estate brokerage in North America has 15% retained company dollar. Yeah. So it's not like those dudes are rolling in cash, right? Yeah. The difference is the 8% gross margin, those types of numbers are going to get better. And at some point, they were going to have scaled up enough that, okay, we don't need to hire any more people, right? We don't need to open any more offices and pay those leases. We don't need to do that. We've got it set. And now they can flip, right? So that's one thing, that their actual margins on the iBuyer business is really, really solid. But there's an aspect to this that I think, this is the other thing I wanted to kind of share with y'all, because it's just really fun and really interesting. Which is, I've been saying since 2014, right? When Open Door first came out, and people at that point was starting to kind of freak out. Oh, Open Door, they're going to disintermediate us. They're coming after our business. Like, yeah, I didn't see that, right? I actually thought then that Open Door, as well as Zillow and all these iBuyers, ultimately are a mortgage play. Right? And I know you're a VIP subscriber, so I know you read that post. What I thought I'd do is like share some of the numbers that come out of that. So here's why I think Zillow is doing this. So let me, again, look at sharing. Share. Here we go. All right, share. All right, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Is it too small?
It's a little small, but.
Okay, hold on. Let me look at Zoom. All right, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so this is what I sort of rough, back of the envelope math computed. Rich Barton said that they plan on selling 5,000 homes, right, within 3 years.
Per month.
I actually think that figure is low. Yeah. Because there's an earnings call where Spencer Rascoff talked about 10,000 homes, right, which is only 2% of the market, whatever. But he said 5,000. Okay, 75% mortgage attach rate, right? And I use this figure because this is what new home construction tends to get. Now, so maybe before I go on, here's the key thing that I think is the key assumption here, right? The biggest problem with the transaction process, if you think about it, is all around financing and mortgage, right? Because most people need to get a mortgage if they're going to buy a home. And then most banks want to crawl up your ass and like look at every goddamn purchase. Like, did you buy the stick of gum? That kind of stuff. So it just takes a long time. And then you have the whole appraisal process, which takes a bunch of time, and the banks, all mortgages require appraisal, right? What I said was, look, if I'm Zillow, if I'm Open Door, and I go and I buy the house for cash, I now own that house, right? It turns out that I can offer seller financing on that house, right? And I mean, again, the research I'm looking at is like there's some minimal kind of regulations that you have to follow, ATR and so on and so forth, but it's pretty minimal. And the key thing is the underwriting standards, there's no real strong regulation around that. Because fundamentally, CFPB, the government, they don't really care if a big company wants to bet its own money to sell its own property. I mean, they just don't care that much, right? Because it's not like some depositor at a bank losing money. There's very little of that. So what I said is, okay, it's my house that I own, right? I want to offer seller financing on it. Now you can't just force consumers to use it. So it's real simple. Like if anyone's ever done new construction, what they'll say is like, yeah, you could use Chase, you could use whoever, but if you use our mortgage company, we'll knock $5,000 off the price of the home.
Yeah.
So new construction gets 75% attach rates. I'm sitting here going, why can't Zillow do that? They say it's our home. If you buy one of our Zillow home inventory, and then you get the mortgage through us, we'll knock $5,000 off. Easy, right? So I'm saying, okay, they're getting a 75% mortgage attach rate. I think that's pretty fair. That means for 5,000 homes, they'll have 3,750 mortgages. Okay. Again, average sold price of Zillow homes last 4 quarters. Down payment of 3%, that comes off of the Zillow Home Loans website, right? So we know that they're willing to do loans at 3% down payment. And I don't know about y'all, I don't know about the audience, but I don't know a single buyer that like loves putting down payments. Like, let's just tie up huge amounts of cash. If they could pay less, I think they would. So there's your average mortgage amount. 30-year fixed, these are all GSE Fannie conforming loans, 4.5%, fees and points. So that's 1.1 billion in mortgages every month. Okay, now, so this is some of the stuff that I did research. I talked to some friends of mine who are like mortgage brokers, mortgage bankers. You know, when you make a loan, a mortgage loan, you don't hold on to it. Most companies don't hold on to it. They immediately turn around and sell it, right? When you sell that loan, what his point is, for government conforming loans, it's 550 basis points is what you would get if you sell the entire thing, 5.5%. So if Zillow were to do this, they would make 61.6 million every month just from selling those mortgages, right? And then just from the fees and points, half a point, they'd make that. So annualized revenue, we're looking at $800 million. And revenue per mortgage, 18,000. And it turns out that the mortgage banking business could be actually pretty damn profitable, especially if you automate a lot of it. Right? So the profit margins are rather nicer, right? And that's for conforming, like Fannie, Freddie, GSE loans. It gets a little bit more interesting if you go to non-conforming, what's called non-QM, right? Back in the day, this would be called subprime, but it's not subprime anymore because all these people who have like amazing credit record. So this is really for like business owners, 1099s, real estate agents, people who aren't W-2. They don't have like, here's my pay stub for the last 3 years kind of deal. If you do or it could be loans that have a much higher interest rate or whatever else. Now, again, keep in mind, since Zillow owns the home and they're doing seller financing, they can do non-QM all day long. Right. So again, the thing about non-QM is the rate could be way higher, right? Because it's not qualifying. At the same time, if you're a 1099, if you're a gig economy, if you're a business owner and you want to buy a home and Zillow comes to you and says, hey, if you use us, we'll knock $5,000 off the price of the home. And oh, by the way, we'll totally give you a loan. We will give you a mortgage, right? In 3 days. It's some crazy number. But you're going to have to pay, 6.5%. You're going to have to pay 8%, whatever the number is. And then the rest of it, I'm not going to go through all of this unless people really want to know. Now we're looking at 1.2 billion. Okay. That's on 5,000 homes, right? Like I said, Spencer is on record as saying one day, 10,000 homes is only 2% of the market, right? So think back to the Uber chart that we looked at. You think it's 10%, right? We're looking at $12 billion a year in revenue from mortgage. 12 billion, right? Like at that point, if you're Zillow, what do you care about real estate commissions? Like you'll pay people whatever the hell, you'll pay full cooperating, you'll pay listing. It doesn't matter because the real money is sitting right here, right? Yeah. And just as just something to think about, the mortgage market is something like 1.3 trillion, right? Real estate commissions total is like 60 billion, maybe. So if you're Zillow, if you're open to which market do you want to get a piece of, it's not the ridiculous commission market that everyone's freaked out about. It's the mortgage market, right? So this is something I presented to the whole VIP subscribers. Yeah. I just thought it's interesting to share with you guys.
So Rob, here's the here's the question. So if we have a lot of great agents on the call listening, what does this mean? What does this mean for the agent? What should an agent be thinking about? There may be no answer, but what does it mean? How can they kind of think and future-proof themselves?
Oh man. So you're going to make me go to this next slide. All right, let's share. I think it means a lot. Okay. First of all, if you're going to try and quote, fight this, right? Go fight it if you want. Just make sure you're doing it using real numbers and real data. Because again, what I don't want to see happen is for an agent to go and talk to somebody, a past client that they've had relationships with for 10, 15 years, and then go with them with this emotional, oh my God, iBuyer's gonna rip you off. Look, there's a really decent chance that person is probably going to go on Zillow and request an offer anyway. And when the offer comes back and it's way better than what you told them it was going to be, you have just lost a lot of credibility and destroyed 10, 15 years of relationships. I'm like, don't let that happen, right? It's better for you to actually go to them with some data and say, listen, if you were to sell to Zillow, this is what I'm showing. The difference is about $1,000, right? If you want to sell to Zillow, so I think there's a practice that I think could be developed in the future where it's like, I'll help you with that, right? Let me help you negotiate against that, whatever it is. Maybe you're not going to get like a quote listing fee, right? Because I don't know that I'm going to pay somebody 3% or 2% or 1% just for that, but I might pay an hourly fee. You're an expert. I trust you. You want to help me negotiate against Zillow on this? I'll pay you $500 an hour. I'll pay you $2,000. I mean, I think that's possible. But the other aspect is if you're going to fight it, then do whatever you want. Just make sure you have some data so that you don't damage your credibility. The other thing, though, is if you were to work with some of these guys, there's some interesting numbers to come out of that. So let me share this with you guys. Where's my share? Share desktop.
So just as Rob is doing this, I'm going to put a link to Rob's website here. You guys should all become and notorious ROB VIP. We're not trying to sell you anything, but just know this, that
I appreciate that.
I get to see like just for, I get to see, I read Rob's like early report on iBuyers probably like 7 months ago. And I was like, I didn't even like, I underlined the whole paper and then Rob told me that was just the executive summary. I was like, there's more. How much more is there?
It's like 70 pages.
So definitely want to make sure you guys are following Rob, and as you can tell, he's just a badass.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Matt. All right. So this is again from a slide from presentations I give these days, where I talk about the business impact of iBuyer. Okay. So this is the George Lawton team. I met him. He's an awesome guy, really smart, really capable, just a great guy. He's the gentleman on the left with the tie, okay, in this picture, and that's part of his team. So what Zillow likes to do, and I think, this different for Open Doors, different for OfferPad. What Zillow likes to do is they like to go into a market and pick one top tier agent team to represent them on all of their deals, right? So they're going to be the listing agent for all the Zillow owned homes. And they're also going to be Zillow's buyer agent when Zillow goes to acquire homes. So when I looked at kind of what Zillow did in the last 12 months, and this does not include some of the Q3 data, which is, this is a little bit old, right? I'm saying that the Lawton team did 696 listings, right? Sales volume of 216 million, basically. I'm assuming they're getting just about 1%, which is the institutional rate. So that's GCI of 2.1 million. Now, keep in mind that Zillow bought every one of those homes that it sold with the Lawton team. Using the Lawton team, now you've got double that, right? So it's 4 million just from Zillow. Now, I think they're on pace for roughly between 1,000 to 1,500 listings, just listings, for 2019. Thing is, like, everyone on the phone is probably a real estate professionals. They understand if you have a listing, you're going to generate buyer leads from this, right? I mean, how many you're going to generate, who knows? But not every buyer that's going to come in to inquire on a house is going to buy that house. Only one's going to buy that house. Well, you now have the opportunity to go sell them some other house. So we don't know what that number is, right? But I did ask George, when I saw him. So I was like, how's that, So it's good. It's real nice. I'm like, yeah, I bet it is. When I look at it, I asked him flat out, are you the number one agent in Armless in the, in the Phoenix area? It's like, oh, I don't know. There's some guys who do some, huge volume, but, the luxury agents, et cetera. I'm like, I don't know. But I got to tell you, man, having one company, one client generate 1,000 listings.
Yeah.
Dude,
insane.
That's kind of insane. So one of the things that it does is I think it ends up really concentrating power, right? At least Zillow. Again, Open Doors different, OfferPad's different. And it's just something I think for people to keep in mind, that the business impact of these things are pretty ginormous.
Yeah.
And you could see that as a threat, or you could see this as an opportunity. When I look at it, I don't know that there's a whole lot that I could do as an agent, right? So, I'd say I'd rather try and look for ways to work with them, right? Again, at the end of the day, it's about the consumer. how can I make money? How can I monetize that whole thing? And again, I think the best potential way might be something like, you're thinking about selling your home, right? You know, all these iBuyers in our market. Let's go get offers from all of them. I'll help you analyze those offers. I'll help you look at those terms. I'll help you do all those things. And I'm going to charge you whatever, you know, an hourly rate for that service. But if at the end of it, you decide you just want to go the traditional route, I'd be happy to list your home and, you know, do a traditional real estate thing. I mean, I think that's not a terrible idea, to be honest. You know, I'm expecting to see that happen.
So recently, I'll give you guys a quick, so recently there's, like Rob said, there's a lot of other iBuyers in the marketplace right now.
Yeah.
So I got a call from Rye, New York. A couple of agents had a pretty high-end home, and they had an iBuyer offer. They're paying under market, and this was in the, you know, this was close to 8 million. So that's not an iBuyer-like market, but they were trying to get this listing, and they're going in for a listing appointment, but the sellers had already told them that there was a potential iBuyer offer on it. And then they call me and they're like, hey, we just heard that, you know, there's this iBuyer offer. Can you help us? And I'm like, when is the appointment? They said, well, we're outside the house. And I'm like, you can't call me 4 minutes before, right? So I said, well, get in the appointment and then like zoom me in. So I'm asking these questions. So essentially I asked, I'm like, tell me about the house. Why does an iBuyer want to actually put an offer on this? They're like, oh, this was Marilyn Monroe lived here. I'm like, wait, what? Like, very important fact that someone did not, you know, miss. And so I said, okay. So it was super simple. I said, well, you got 2 iBuyer offers at this price. We can go, so if you take that, you can go off market and promote it. We can go on market and run a process, or for a home like yours, we can actually run non-distressed auction. And I said, by the way, your non-distressed auction price is the same as your reserve is your iBuyer price. So regardless, you're going to get it. The seller looks at me, he goes, that's amazing. And I go, oh, you already have the reserve. The hardest part in the auction is the reserve. Like,
that's right.
iBuyer is giving you the reserve.
That's
right. So you should run this process. We should run an off market for 30 days. We should run an on market for 60 days. And then if not anything else, we should do an auction. Worst case scenario, you should get the iBuyer offer anyway. Regardless, if you can do this for 90 days, you win.
Right.
And he looked at me, and so now the agents got a 90-day listing. They're able to generate a ton of buyers. We just got this is probably 3 weeks ago, so they're still in the market. So now instead of walking in and looking dumb, we were able to walk them through something.
Yeah, I like that. That's really sweet. Yeah.
And people are like, well, instantly they're like, oh, you got an iBuyer offer, and they try to shoot the iBuyer offer down. Like, that's correct. What I don't think that's healthy. But just know that why it's coming, why they're offering that, who's the iBuyer, like ask those questions. And you can almost even tell the seller, hey, can you give me a single party representation where I can go talk to this iBuyer to see if they're legit, if they're not one of the
And again, keep in mind that we need to make a distinction between iBuyers and investors, right?
Correct.
So if it's an iBuyer, they're going to offer market, you know, or at least it's pretty close to market. If they're flippers or investors pretending to be iBuyers, oh my God, the opportunity for the agent to look great in that, to me, is huge.
It's amazing. Yeah.
You know, and again, let's just be careful about your terms, because again, the point here is to preserve your credibility with your clients, right? You know, if you try and shoot everything down, like it just sounds self-serving, because it is self-serving.
Yeah.
Whereas if you said, listen, this is not an iBuyer, this is a flipper. Okay. Yeah. This is how flippers make money. They need a 30% discount because they're going to put in $50,000 into this home and do a new kitchen and a new bathroom. Is that fair? Is that right for you? That's your call. Or do you want to maybe put $12,000 into the home for renovations, new paint, the whole thing? And I think the fair market value is this. I mean, it just makes you look better. And then hey, Marilyn Monroe used to live here. Okay, well, guess what? We're doing a special auction, and you know, I mean, it just makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah.
Right?
There's one more question, and then I'll let you go, Rob. It says, not a question, but could Rob comment on this? I had another agent reach out to Zillow Offers yesterday, so her seller clients could submit a non-contingent offer on one of my listings. Thought it was a great way to avoid submitting an offer contingent on the sale of a buyer's home. Any data on this? It's very interesting.
Okay, so let me understand. So I had another agent reach to Zillow Offers. So you're saying I have the listing. The buyer's agent reaches out to Zillow to say, give me an offer on the buyer's current home. There's no data on this yet, but clearly that is something that's happening. Clearly that, again, like I said, I spoke to a seller who had that, right? And just the ability to get rid of that contingency is a huge plus.
Right.
One of the things I do think is we're about to see happen in the next couple of years is, how you have the whole sale contingencies and so on and so forth. I think if the sale contingency is to an iBuyer, I think that shit gets waived. I think,
it's cash. Yeah,
it's cash. It's like, okay, you have an offer that you accepted from these companies. We know they're going to pay. They're not backing out. They're not families. They're not going to go buy a car. And it's like, they're paying cash. It's short. If you have I actually think that that's something we're going to see start to happen, but we don't have a whole lot of data on that sort of thing just yet. On the flip side, so we can't talk about this whole iBuyer thing. And I just mentioned, because I know we're kind of close to the end of time here. Agents and brokers, I think, need to take a really hard look at models like knock and fly homes, right? Which is really more of a bridge loan type model as opposed to an iBuyer model, because you need to be able to offer something, right? You can't just walk in and go, let me list your house and stage it and so on and so forth. If these types of iBuyer type companies are in your market, I think the proper approach is to say, let me help you with advice. Let's get all the offers. Don't just go to one. Let's get all of them. And then, let me advise you on it. And if you still want to either list your home with me, or you might be outside the buy box. These companies their pipeline is like this, and they're getting a flood of inquiry. They might say, yeah, we're not going to make an offer on your house. Well, at least now we know what to your point, what the floor ought to be, right? And then let's go forward. And I think it could be used in some real clever ways for the right professional agent, the right professional broker to look better. That's it. At the end of the day, it's to look better in front of your clients, to offer better service, and to make them happy, and explain to them,
I just like it because it completely changes the living room conversation. And it's not let me tell you everything I'm going to do. Let me tell you all that I'm going to. There's no pitch anymore.
Correct.
It changes into it becomes like in a financial advisory conversation, right?
Correct.
This is no different than you can buy my bonds, or I offer open architecture. I'll go buy whatever bonds you want. But the conversation is very advice centric, and so now it's not like Sharran's trying to pitch me something anymore.
Right.
Oh my gosh! Like if I don't get Sharran's advice, like the stuff's gonna break. Like that becomes. Right. And that's super powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. I think we spent an hour on this thing. We could go longer. I love talking to you, but
hey, Rob, on behalf of everybody and me personally, thank you so much for spending time with us. You're a fountainhead of this information, and everybody should go to. I'm going to paste this thing again. Go to Rob's website. At least start following him. He posts some great stuff. He claims to be a writer, but what he does,
really long.
Better. But what he does better, I think, Rob, you and I've talked about this. Great writers actually are really great thinkers, and that's where
I appreciate that.
That's where it's a really powerful thing. So, Rob, I appreciate you very much, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Great questions.
See you guys.
Bye.